Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're glad that you're joining us again this week. We're always happy for people like you that are interested in what's happening in our cities, because it is important for good government that there be a flow of information back and forth between our city councils, our mayors, our residents, and the staff in our city. So we're glad that you're joining us. If you haven't watched us before, each week we'll have someone on from one of the 9 cities in CCX's viewing area to tell us about what are the current issues, what's happening now and what's going to be happening in the future in that particular city. And we will encourage you to take down the name, the email, the phone number of the person giving you the information so that if something resonates with you, you can be in contact with them. Then from time to time, we'll bring on areas that cover all of our cities, like getting some responses from what happened in this legislature. And then from time to time, we'll take issues that are getting some media attention about the cities and see what people in our city think about it. And that's what we're going to be doing this week. We're going to be talking about Minneapolis and St. Paul have been working on a number of business regulations that they're going to put in place in their cities that are provoking a fair amount of criticism, both for and against. Some of the areas that they're looking into are businesses offering sick leave pay. They're looking at packaging rules, things like no polystyrene, eco-friendly packaging, banning plastic, and they're looking at issues like raising the minimum wage. Now, these are all issues that have not been dealt with in our suburban areas at all, but that are being moved forward to different degrees in our major cities. So we're going to take time tonight to talk with a number of city councils and mayors from throughout our area on their responses to this, what they think about this subject, and what they think may or may not happen with it in the suburban areas. So we'll ask you to watch it, and if you find some areas that resonate with you, be in contact with us too, and let us know what you think on these issues, because we would be happy to get ideas from you on more issues like this that you think we ought to cover. Now we'll start with our first city council person. Well, now to move into a completely different topic, each year or part of the year I pick something that I'm reading in the papers and then ask everybody to respond to it. So you're the first person that we're going to do this with. But Minneapolis and St. Paul have been discussing, and there's all kinds of information about adding regulations to their cities that have provided a fair amount of criticism from businesses. Yes. And these have dealt with offering sick leave for employees, packaging rules, no polystyrene containers, eco-friendly packaging, plastic bag bans, raising the minimum wage. So these are all issues that are happening at the 2 cities levels right now. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it would be interesting to hear about are you getting any, the suburbs, both ones that you know about and your own, do you see any movement in that area for suburban cities in that particular group, or where people are lobbying for those kinds of things?
You know, we have not seen that in Osseo.
Okay.
You know, and I guess, in my opinion on it, I mean, the city our job is to plow the streets and, and deliver, make sure that your waste is removed and you have water, and you know, we provide services for people.
Right.
And to get to and obviously zoning and regulations to make sure that everything is safe and and cleanly, and you know, all that. And beyond that, I in my opinion, cities I think should stay out of it. And I mean,
what are some of the problems that you think might occur if cities move in that direction?
You know, maybe it's my philosophy, but I think the free market is more efficient than a government ever can be, because of the steps and the processes that you have to go through. And you know, I think some of them, you know, regulations and things are put in place for safety of the public or betterment of the whole, and I mean those make some sense. But I mean, when you really really start controlling and dictating, I think that's when some issues arise.
Well, and like I said, there's a lot of criticism, lots of publicity about that, but it's like the beginning of something that might go somewhere or might not, right? Now, part of that whole process is that there's debate about whether this is something that should be done on a city basis or on a statewide basis. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean
your thoughts on that.
The state holds our charters, from cities' basis. So, I mean, ultimately we have. I mean, any laws that was always any laws or things we do can't supersede what the state does. So,
right.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how some of the stuff plays out.
Right.
To hold up, whether it be in court or how it's gonna transpire. Because I mean, yeah, we can't. I mean, that was always we can't make any laws that supersede what the state does. So, I guess stay tuned.
And there's some people that say, well, this shouldn't be done on a case-by-case basis. It should cover the whole state or not be done at all.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so in Osseo, you haven't had anybody wanting things beyond the kind of the basic core things that cities need to work on?
No.
Okay.
I mean, get occasional requests for some crazy things.
Right. But not in that area.
No,
right.
no, nothing.
But that's why I thought it'd be kind of interesting just to see what's happening in the different cities, because I think St. Louis Park, maybe Edina, we're looking at packaging issues.
Yep.
But it depends upon the people in your city and whether people are lobbying to look into those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, do you have any groups in your city that are particularly concerned about these issues?
I haven't had any groups really approach me about those issues. I think those issues are tough. I think that the approach that Minneapolis and St. Paul have taken are tough because it affects the businesses that they have.
Right.
It affects the surrounding communities that are around them. If we institute a certain minimum wage and they have a different minimum wage, and Plymouth has a different minimum wage, and Brooklyn Park has a different minimum wage, and New Hope here has a different minimum wage, and how it's applied and what it's done. I mean, the way Minneapolis was done, I think, was very complicated because, if your employees spent over so much time in the city doing business in a year, then they were supposed to be getting these extra benefits or different benefits. I think that becomes very difficult for businesses. I think it becomes very difficult for the cities to enforce. I guess my preference would be sort of see a statewide approach to it so that there's some uniformity. I think it'd be easier for businesses, and I think it would be, I think it'd be very difficult if you have one sort of series of laws about what plastic bags can be used in Maple Grove and a different set in Brooklyn Park, and how do businesses adjust to that and how do they deal with that?
Do you think it's a kind of issue that leads to a statewide solution, or maybe not? Because there was an article today that was saying, well, if some cities do it, then at least they're experimenting and you see what works or what doesn't work. I don't know.
I don't know. I just think it'd be very difficult for businesses to keep track of.
I would think so.
If you're saying that everybody in my city has to make a certain minimum wage, well, if they're employed in your city, located in your city, I think that's one thing. Right. But when they're, it includes people who travel to your city for work, I think that becomes incredibly difficult to keep track of. I mean, I know that, for instance, myself, I go downtown to Hennepin County as an attorney on a regular basis, but I don't really keep track of my time, and sometimes other attorneys in my office come with me, sometimes other staff people come with me, depending on what we're doing. I mean, I think it's a very difficult rule to actually implement and follow.
Yeah, and so there's quite a bit of discussion going on in the legislature in regards to that this year too, for the first time.
There is for the first time, and I think that, I don't know what will happen if they're going to put in a mandate that you can't, cities don't have the ability to do this or not. always like to give cities the freedom to do
Right.
it, but I think it's tough for businesses to adjust to those type of things.
Yeah, so it really is a issue with a lot of different factors that are just coming out.
Yes, and I think that hopefully they'll have a full discussion of it. And,
Right.
Give it some good thought before they take action.
And that's what I thought, well, we'll just dip into the suburban response, right?
Yeah.
And they're kind of, you figure out what you want to do, but we're not ready to do that. And you don't have any groups pushing for it, too, where they do have.
They do have in Minneapolis,
right.
and I don't know if other communities closer to Minneapolis, whether Robbinsdale or
Yeah, I
New
haven't
Hope or
gotten to
Crystal,
that yet, right.
They
Those
have
cities
those groups, but I just think it's tough.
Right, yeah, it's a real gnarly issue. But I just thought it'd be interesting to touch on that with all the cities and see what
Sure.
people have to say. Topics again. Minneapolis and St. Paul in the media, newspapers, TV, have been discussing and working on regulations that deal with minimum wage, that deal with sick leave policy, and it's definitely, they've dealt with packaging rules. So it's definitely an area that there's some controversy, and I thought since it's being presented so often in public, we should talk about if there's anything like this happening in the suburbs. So do the suburban cities have any groups lobbying or anybody reaching out to your city council on any of those issues?
I have heard nothing.
Okay.
I followed Minneapolis. I have a lot of friends that own businesses in Minneapolis,
Right.
and I know some of the people on the city council in Minneapolis. So through my dialogue with them,
Right.
I'm pretty tuned into it. But I have heard nobody has approached Robbinsdale's council or staff, to my knowledge,
Okay.
About this effort expanding. I think it's going to have to be. If it happens, it's going to happen in the city, the metro area cores before it starts to creep out into the other communities.
Yeah, what are some of the problems that you've seen as Minneapolis and St. Paul have started to deal with it? What are some of the problems that brings?
Well, I don't know that they've established it completely
Okay.
yet. And I have a feeling this next election cycle for mayor and city council in Minneapolis might be a good barometer for what kind of problems it's creating or not creating.
Right.
It's a very, people are very passionate on both sides of the issue.
Yeah.
And there's benefits to it, and there's, things that make it more difficult.
Right.
I own 2 businesses myself.
Oh, yeah.
I have my own opinions about it, but at the end of the day, I don't vote my opinions. I vote for what is best for the
Right.
people that I represent. And that, I haven't had any dialogue with anyone about it to this point.
Yeah, and I haven't run across that, but I thought it'd be kind of interesting to just see what people are thinking.
Sure.
And there's kind of a division between should this be done on core city basis, should it be done on a statewide basis? What do you think of that?
Well, you're kind of creeping into my own political opinion, which I'm going to
Okay.
give you.
Okay.
But it is my own
Right,
opinion.
yeah.
I think, like most of us, I use my own life experience for things that I want to make decisions on.
Right.
And throughout my whole life, I've been a member of a union. I've been paid minimum wage. Granted, it was a few years ago, but I was. And for me, it always worked better to put my future compensation and everything on my own efforts, not on the efforts of the weakest one in my group.
Right.
And that may sound selfish to some, and I understand that. But for me, that I tend to not desire a lot more control in these areas.
Right.
I think we have a minimum wage. I think that needs to be adjusted more frequently and keep it more realistic, instead of having a thing where it has to double or nearly double to get it to catch up, because that's crippling to a lot of the economy.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and there's just a lot of issues with this particular process that's going on, and that's why I thought it'd be interesting just to hear, so people, we're not talking about to do it or not do it.
Exactly.
Just, what are some of the things to think about?
Well, and it's, it's kind of like standing in the middle of a room of dominoes.
Right.
As soon as you move, and touch one of them, there's going to be a whole lot of
Right,
stuff happening.
right,
And
right.
you have to make sure that the dominoes on the
Oh,
perimeter
yeah,
of
it's
the room
important.
are considered, as well as the ones that are right by your feet.
Right.
And that's a monumental task, and it takes courage to either make the change or to not make the
Right,
change.
right.
And I think the answer really, like most things politically, the answer lies somewhere in the middle.
Right. So it's a different area than cities usually get into. So I thought we would take a little time to talk with people from the different cities on, first of all, do you have any groups in your area lobbying for these kind of changes?
In our area, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Statewide, we have the League of Minnesota Cities, which is quite involved because they represent
Oh, right,
Minneapolis
right.
and St. Paul, as well as all of our outstate cities. So they're, we get weekly updates from the league. But because we have no issues in Crystal currently, we're not talking about getting rid of plastic bags or
Right,
upping the
right.
age for smoking. It hasn't affected us here. And
Yeah,
we
and-
have not been, personally, I've not been contacted by anyone
Yeah,
on these
and that
issues
was kind
either.
of, is there any movement towards this in the suburbs is one of the things. And then what are some of the problems that cities might face if they move into those kinds of issues? I thought we could talk about.
Well, I belong to the local Crystal, Robbinsdale, New Hope Rotary
Okay.
Club, and we meet every Friday morning. We have a speaker come every week to just talk about a different
Sure.
topic. And we did recently have somebody from, like the Hennepin County Health, come and advocate to us to stop selling like the little flavored cigars in your community,
right.
or make things 21.
Yeah.
Smoking 21. So there is, I think I can feel a little sense that it's starting to spill out into the suburbs.
Okay.
Or at least that's the sense about it I got.
Right, right.
But as to how I feel about it,
And more just a reaction, not anything we're going to
I
hold
think-
anybody to, but just what
I
you're
think
thinking.
they're butting in business that they have no right to. That's
Okay.
my personal opinion.
Sure.
I think city government should be about providing, good streets, clean drinking water, and people want to flush their toilets. They want to feel safe, so they want law enforcement, and they want
right.
fire service.
Right.
But it isn't up to me as an elected official to police what I think parents should be policing. And the state sets laws that they feel are reasonable
Right.
for selling alcohol, for instance. That's 21.
Right.
And so we will abide by that, and we will, fashion our policies and our ordinances after
Right.
what the state says. But since I don't pay taxes or payroll for these businesses, I think if they are adhering to the state guidelines, I'm just going to leave them be. Because, I've always felt like,
Sure.
and for instance, I work in the city of Minneapolis, and we were recently purchased by a national company, and I need bags to put merchandise in, to send
right.
merchandise out the door. And I can't get bags from corporate because they said, well, the city of Minneapolis has an ordinance where you can't have bags, plastic bags. I said, what? It's single-use plastic bags, which I'm assuming are the ones
right.
like you get from the convenience stores. But I mean, they're really not single-use to me because I might carry something out and then I use them to line the garbage can by my
Right.
dryer.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
using them twice, so
Yeah.
they're not single-use.
At least,
but
right.
I guess I get kind of crabby when I watch some of these stories. I think, who do you think you are? So.
And it's the
your thoughts.
unintended consequences, I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
that concerns me the most. When you have a company, if, for instance, a person I know who is a state representative, he wrote online saying, I have a friend that owns restaurants in multiple places.
Oh, right.
So,
right.
and they have employees that are going back and forth. So are you going to tell that employee, well, you're going to get $13 here, but you're going to,
right,
how do
right.
you manage that? And how do companies, especially small businesses, how do they manage that?
Right.
So as an unintended consequence, you're seeing businesses leaving. Minneapolis has seen quite a few. A lot of the shops are gone. A lot of restaurants have closed and are moving out of that area. You see West End, and the West End complex in St. Louis Park is huge.
Oh, right.
And, you know, you get free parking there. You know, you have your stores all together. You have a great living arrangements. So it's easy to do business there.
Right.
So Minneapolis, when you have all the things that are going on, the unintended consequences, you might say, hey, $15 an hour sounds great. We all want to see people earn an affordable wage. That's not the issue. But if a small business says, I'm not paying myself now, or I am going to have to cut your hours because this is all we've got.
Yeah.
You know, and if they're paying higher taxes and they're doing all this, you're making it harder for businesses to stay there. And that's the last thing you want, is loss of jobs because of some of these policies that you have set for your city. Now think of Edina with this upping cigarette sales to 21. Where are people going to go? Bloomington. You know, they're going to go next door.
Right, right.
They're going to go to Ridgefield or, you know, what's north of Edina? St. Louis Park, perhaps. So, you know, then what's going to happen to those store owners?
Right.
They're going to lose business.
There's a lot of factors involved. That's why I thought just talking about it would be good to bring the issue up.
It's like, if we can all just think ahead to what happens if, and think of those unintended consequences, and is it going to do more harm than good? That's my concern.
Sure. And then the other aspect of it is maybe this should be a state law versus city by city. And people feel differently about that because there is some bills moving through the legislature and people are concerned about taking away your ability to do things.
Right. Certain things you do need local control on. You know, and if Edina chooses to up it to 21 for smoking, or to buy cigarettes, correct?
Right.
Or is it just to be able
buy
to smoke?
cigarettes.
To buy
I think
cigarettes.
cigarettes, yeah.
You know, that's their choice, but what are they going to see happen? You know?
Right.
And maybe another example might be Sunday sales.
Right.
Now, locally, a business can choose to be open or not. The state just is allowing them to be open, but it doesn't say you have to be.
Right.
There's local control.
Right.
You know, we're allowing
Right.
that business to make their own decision. So,
So there's just a lot of factors to think about, and this is just to start the thinking process. Not okay. Now, the Crystal Airport has an open house, and they have. Now, on a topic that is just impinging but not active in our area, is Minneapolis and St. Paul are both working at some regulations with businesses, whether it's sick leave or $15 an hour pay or how you package things. And I thought it would be good to just talk with how does that affect the suburbs? Of course, then it also went to the state legislature too. Yep. So it's an issue that people hear about. Do suburban cities like yours have any groups lobbying for those kinds of things? So is that an issue that you're hearing from or not hearing from? Or
I'm sure as soon as I say this that we haven't had anybody. I'll get somebody. We haven't yet.
Okay.
I know there are groups that will come.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we're watching Minneapolis St. Paul is it going to work?
Right. Yeah. You don't know because they can be.
And what are the effects if I have a business in Brooklyn Park who's based here, and they do some business in Minneapolis? How do those rules pertain?
Right.
Because typically business regulation hits small business the hardest because they don't have the funds to deal with all the regulation. And so, you know, Brooklyn Park tends to have smaller businesses. So, you know, that regulation tends to have a greater effect. I think that, and people who have, you know, watched me on my Twitter or on my Facebook have seen the thing that we're not talking about in this $15 an hour thing is robotics and AI.
Oh, yeah.
And people who don't, those two things, which no one is talking about, will have more effect on employment and labor, you know, how robust the labor market is than any other thing. Because as you raise the cost of labor, the ROI of robotics and all this other stuff, and they're coming.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who thinks they're not, they need to pay attention. Changes the ROI. People will say, you know what, if I have to carry so many workers, I can pay no overtime, no benefits, have a fixed asset, and have that do meal prep.
Yeah.
So I'm a wait and see.
There's a lot of factors that get involved.
Yes. Typically suburbs, we tend to get businesses out of Minneapolis, St. Paul by not being Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Well, and then there
I think
is,
that's the suburb wide,
right,
not just Brooklyn
right,
Park.
Right, and there is discussion about maybe this needs to be a statewide issue
Yep.
versus a city issue.
Yep, I believe it's better for statewide. The legislature chose not to,
Right.
and so but the other part of me is local control.
Yep, and that's an important. That's what I was going to bring up.
If these rules and these changes are wildly successful,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
If they're not, there's only one group to blame. It's not
Yeah.
the state legislature, it's not Brooklyn Park,
Right,
it's not
right.
the federal government, it's the city of Minneapolis. But if they're successful, they get all the credit, right? So
Right. Well, and to have some group try it out is helpful to all the others that are just
Yep.
watching.
I just don't see, Brooklyn Park with that will adopt that. But I think that a lot of that is here in Brooklyn Park we have a lot more diverse opinions.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have a lot more diverse needs. I think we take a little different look at things. Minneapolis St. Paul doesn't have that diverse
Right.
political
Yeah, and,
outlook.
and the suburbs are different. Have their differences from the metro, the cities.
Yeah, and you imagine, let's say we did this.
Yeah.
Champlin would start to get a bunch of restaurants. That wouldn't go to Brooklyn Park. Because if I was a restaurant owner, I could say, you can just relocate in Champlin,
Yeah.
not pay
Right.
the same regulations.
Yeah, so it's sort of a gnarly issue, but
Yes,
but
Minneapolis
it's-
St. Paul being bigger, I think they have.
Right,
They can.
right.
We'll see. what
Deal with it
happens.
differently.
And I have no idea what's going to happen. And
So it's moving forward.
it's all of them.
It's
Yep,
moving
I'm happy to
forward.
let other
Right.
cities experiment on stuff.
And then, now, switching topics again, I want to thank all of the mayors and city council people that took time and shared their thoughts and their ideas on this general subject with you. The moving forward on changing business regulations in cities. And there are strong feelings both ways on this issue. So we'll hope that it gave you a little something to think about. And if you would like more issues like this on our show, we encourage you to take the time to let us know. Go on our website or go to our phone number and let us know if there's some issues like this that you'd like to have us cover. And then we do encourage you, because you can, if you aren't able to have a television, you can stream our program when it's live, Wednesday nights at 8:30 on channel 859, and you can stream it by going to ccxcreate.org/livestream.aspx. You can also catch our show later on by going to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/NWCityPolitics, or follow us on Twitter, because you can reach us at twitter.com/NWCP2. So we hope you'll join us and share your thoughts and your ideas with us. This area became one that even made it into the state legislature. There were some legislators that felt strongly enough that cities should not make any business regulations or regulations of this type, that they had a law passed to prevent cities from doing that. However, this was a little broader than maybe most people were ready for, because the law did not pass, and cities have the freedom to make these kinds of regulations. We'll hope you'll join us again next week. We're glad that you've been with us on our show, and we'll encourage you to keep watching. Bye.